Welcome to the Center for Architecture. My name is Jesse Lazar. I'm the Executive Director here at AIANY New York and the Center for Architecture. And here at AIANY New York and alongside the AIANY New York Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, we are honored to be welcomed this evening, Andy Byford to the Center for Architecture. As many of you know very well, Andy Byford has led amazing modernization efforts in major transit systems all over the world, and we have great hopes for what he'll be able to achieve following his appointment last year by the U.S. Department of Transportation to lead Amtrak's Penn Station reconstruction. I've had the personal privilege of serving on the Penn Station Working Advisory Group for the last year or so, and I can attest to the shift in that group since Andy assumed his role towards robust action and sharp focus on delivering a great outcome for the city. Tonight's program will begin with a short presentation on Penn Station Madison Square Garden history and some of the proposed solutions over the years. Then we'll hear directly from Andy, and that will be followed by a panel discussion with AIANY New York Transportation and Infrastructure Committee members, and then finally a Q&A with the audience. We will distribute index cards a little bit later so you can write questions down and we'll collect those. The introductory presentation tonight will be given by Alan Swerdlow, FAIA. Alan is a specialist at the Fulbright Foundation and is a two-time recipient of the Lucy G. Moses Award by the Landmarks Conservancy. On the panel for questions later, we'll be joined by Yves Michel, AIA, who is a public sector architect focused on transportation, economic development, and the innovative delivery of mega projects. Jim Wright, AIA, who is a transportation architect and urban designer working on sustainable design of transportation facilities and the public realm. And Tom Grassi, FAIA, the design director of transit architecture at HNTB and formerly at the Port Authority, where he led the reconstruction of the transportation components of the World Trade Center site. And Tom is currently the co-chair of our Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. So if you find tonight's program interesting and informative, we hope that you will check out more programming here at the Center for Architecture, especially that of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Now I'm pleased to invite Alan Swerdlow to the podium to share some Penn Station history and then formally introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you.
I think somebody was going to turn these lights down. Maybe not. Okay, so this is the most important words on the screen tonight are brief history. It's going to be very brief. So if everybody can buckle up and make sure they're in their seatbelts, because I'm going to go through this very quickly. If you want more information about the history of Penn Station and about proposals made for revamping Penn Station, you could go to the New York Times and all kinds of other websites and spend weeks on this, as I have. I would recommend the most recent article in the Times called How Do We Fix It? And anyway, so we're going to go first, we're going to move through the site itself. The site was cleared in the early 1900s between 31st and 33rd and 7th and 8th Avenues. McKim, Mead, and White were chosen as its architects. It was constructed for the Pennsylvania Railroad, and it became a landmark in the city. Another view of it, it epitomized Beaux-Arts architecture when completed in 1910, and as I said before, McKim, Mead, and White were the architects. So the station is filled with light, or was filled with light. It was an incredible place to arrive in the city. When I was actually a young boy, I would do that. And I didn't know what a cathedral was, but I certainly knew what this was. And it was my first introduction to what was a cathedral. And later on in life, I visited south of France to Chartres Cathedral, and I saw exactly the same thing. Amazing structure, which only lasted until 1960. Show you several slides here. So in the 1940s, after World War II, the veterans came back to the States through many of them through Penn Station. And it was an incredible arrival for them because they were now moving from below ground to a building that that came between the transportation underground and the environment outside. It's something that was severely lost in the early 60s. There were major protests in 1962. Sign was put up that it was being redeveloped as Madison Square Garden, and then it was deconstructed. 1965. 22 of the major stone eagles were saved, of which I think we know where 19 are right now. Several are in, I think, Long Island Station's transit hub parking lots. But most of Penn Station went into the Meadowlands, as epitomized in this slide. The only real element that was saved on Penn Station, or from Penn Station, was the Penn Station Service Building. It actually predates Penn Station by 2 years, built in 1908 and designed by Charles McKim and William Symes Richardson. It provided coal-generated electricity for trains, along with heat, refrigeration, and a variety of other functions. It still exists today, and it's being considered to be reintegrated into the Penn Station program. By 1989, the power plant on 31st Street was almost completely obsolete and disused. Well, the destruction of Penn Station led to the Landmarks Preservation Commission in 1965 in response to its loss. So LPC established more than 150 landmark districts in the city, the first being Brookman Heights in 1965. In 1975, there was a similar movement to deconstruct Grand Central, and great quote from Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis: "Is it not cruel to let our city die by degrees, stripped of all her proud monuments, until there will be nothing left of all her history and beauty to inspire our children? If they are not inspired by the past of our city, where will they find the strength to fight for her future?" Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. In this photograph, we see Philip Johnson, of course, Onassis, Bess Meyerson, and Mayor Ed Koch. So once the station was demolished, Madison Square Garden was constructed. It was purchased, the rights were purchased by automobile manufacturer Graham Page, with 40% interest in Madison Square Garden. In 1960, he purchased from the Pennsylvania Railroad the rights to build the station. And it exists now as what is known as the world's most famous arena. Quote from James Dolan. It actually is the world's most famous arena, and it's not a bad place to see sports. The problem with, as we all know, Madison Square Garden, it's a giant boot sitting on top of Penn Station. It has 1,000 columns going through its tracks, going around its tracks, and it doesn't allow for the kind of circulation that would be appropriate in a major rail station such as Penn Station. Vincent Scully once wrote, "One entered the city like a god, one scuttles in now like a rat." So James A. Farley Building was constructed first in 1912 and then added to in 1934. There were early feasibility studies in the early 1990s for relocating Penn Station functions into the Farley Building. In 1998, SOM did a major proposal. 2005, there was a revised SOM design under the Empire State Development Partnership. From 2010 to 2012, Phase 1, West End Concourse, was designed and constructed. In 2016, final designs for the Moynihan Train Hall were approved. 2017, 2020, construction phase. 2021 completed. The problem with Moynihan is that it's basically only Amtrak trains that come into it, and only 5% of the capacity of all of Penn Station. So where do we go from there? So there have been many proposals to move forward with the new Penn Station. I'll show just a few of them right now. In early 2010s, MAS Municipal Art Society Design Challenge, which include SOM, SHOP, and others, 2016 Empire Station Complex. And from 2021 to 2004, the New York State MTA Master Plans, 2023 ASTM, Chakrabarty Alternative, and so on. So let's first look at Municipal Art Society. Skidmore, Owens, and Merrill expanded the site to twice its current square footage, lifted the structure up, and proposed an open green public space on the ground level as a cultural destination, access to fast train and subway systems. This is reimagined Penn Station Concourse by Shop, Dilla, Scolfidio, and Renfro as a civic anchor, seamless integration of various information display systems, airy, layered, and sponge-like infrastructure of the station. And then H3, Party Collaboration Architecture, proposal to move MSG to the waterfront at West 34th Street with an elevated pedestrian promenade and a pier park, an event hall with multiple skyscrapers. So the Empire Station Complex 2016, series of blocks around Madison Square Garden, each one having its own program. Massive multi-billion-dollar redevelopment plan for the area around Penn Station, which upgraded interior spaces and entrances, added new retail, building a large glass opening on 8th Avenue. The new Empire Station Complex would become a state-of-the-art transportation hub. It was spearheaded by former Governor Andrew Cuomo. An image of it. It would span the full city block between 30th and 31st Street, between 7th and 8th Avenue. Expanding onto the block would allow for the construction of 8 additional tracks and increase the station's capacity by 40%. Of course, none of this happened. The state would acquire the theater at Madison Square Garden, allowing for grand entrance hall along 8th Avenue. So East End Gateway, something that actually did happen, 2 phases. Phase 1, let's go back a second. Phase 1, high capacity entrance to Penn Station's Long Island Railroad, as you saw, with access to the 123 ACE subway lines. Phase 2, to double the width of the 32nd Street entrance. And that's actually completed. In 2021 to 2025, Governor Hochul came up with a number of plans to redevelop 18 million square feet of Madison Midtown West neighborhood, 10 new high-rise office towers. John Olibre said, the project will dramatically upgrade passengers' experience by increasing ceiling heights, bringing in natural daylight, and creating better wayfinding and access to platforms. A couple of images, 31st Street looking west, and view of the mid-block train hall facing south. 2023, ASTM, PAU, and HOK's proposal. Full block proposal achieves Governor Hochul's vision for Penn Station with more light, brand new entrance on 8th Avenue. See here. And then Penn Station Revival, a rebirth of classical architecture inspired by the original Penn Station. And this is by Chuck Barty and it's by Alexandros Washburn. And just a couple of images from it. Yeah, wrong person. With restaurants and shops located above, looks down on a concourse level with 18-foot ceilings beneath, replacing the current 8-foot ceiling. So this is the last thing we're going to show tonight. Our committee, Transportation Infrastructure, started to think about possible ways to actually move MSG offsite and also satisfy the interests of James Dolan. So Dolan, is involved in the design of the Sphere in Las Vegas, and he wants them everywhere. He views it as a very highly profitable model and expecting future versions to be even grander than Las Vegas. This includes the potential of building ones in Chicago, Austin, Orlando, and New York City. He has one under contract in Abu Dhabi right now. So we thought, well, if we could imagine Dolan building a Sphere on the west side right where the High Line terminates. What would that look like? Curiously, the sphere controls, or the sphere has 19,000 seats. Madison Square Garden has 19,000 square feet. This would move MSG's functions into the sphere on the west side and allow us to repurpose that building. And with that, I'm going to introduce Andy Byford. Okay, Andy Byford is a transport professional whose career has spanned 3 continents over 3 decades. Today, he serves as special advisor to the Amtrak Board of Directors and is leading the effort, to transform New York Penn Station. Andy joined London Underground in 1989 as a uniformed station foreman and has gone on to lead the largest transit systems in the United States, Canada, and the UK, as well as running day-to-day operations on Australia's busiest network. This unique achievement has given Andy a rare global perspective on transport operations, finances, and politics that translates to his current role, delivering a world-class station that New York, New Jersey, and America deserve. Andy grew up in Plymouth and is a graduate of the University of Leicester. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for that kind introduction. And that was very helpful, actually, having the background given, particularly when we look at some of the proposals that have been talked about in the past and maybe even are still current. So I will come on to that. But it is great to be here. And if I didn't know that I was in an architectural building, I'd know that it was one for 2 reasons. Number one, I love the concrete floor. That's very classic. And number 2, and I hope no one finds it offensive, a lot of people are wearing what I call architect's glasses. I know I'm in an educated and well-informed space. But yeah, as was just said, I'm the special advisor for the board for the reconstruction or transformation, as I call it, of Penn Station. And the reason, it's not just semantics, I'll talk about that in a second. Very, very pleased to be back in New York City. I was just saying with a couple of people on the way in that I enjoyed my time in DC when I was first recruited by Amtrak. I was working on the high-speed portfolio. And it was fun. You know, we were looking to put in a high-speed train between Dallas and Houston. But, you know, DC is not quite New York, right? I was so keen to come back to New York. So in a seminal week in which it was like bookended. At the start of the week was bad news. The Fed said to us, for various reasons, we want Amtrak to give back the funding that you previously had for high speed. And primarily that was so that Amtrak focuses on its core business, which is, you know, to a certain extent, a fair point. And in that same week of that bad news, we got the good news, which was, and by the way, we want Amtrak to have sole and unambiguous control of sorting out Penn Station. So there's been enough attempts by other people. It's kind of designing it by committee. Let's stop messing about and have Amtrak take the lead. The rationale being that it's an Amtrak building. It's a federal building. So I saw a golden opportunity there. I straight on to Tony Kosher, who's the chairman of Amtrak, and I said to him, I want that job. Give me that job. That's my job, right? I really want to do it. Number one, because, you know, kind of selfishly, it's my pathway back to New York. But number 2, because I actually do think this is such an interesting challenge. And I always thought in my career, one more big challenge. And number 3, because I am actually very interested in architecture. I always have been. You know, I find it fascinating. I hate to see old buildings like the old Penn disappear. It doesn't mean say you want a city to be stuck in aspect, far from it. But it should be a compelling mix of old and new. And number 4, because I do like challenges where people say it's impossible, can't be done. Okay, well, we'll see about that. So that is the challenge that I've taken on. And it's very much a team effort. And I'm blessed to have walked into not only having a good team to start with, but also a lot of good work has been done. As we saw in the intro, this is not exactly a new subject. So I won't dwell on this other than to say, you know, look at it. How could you do that? How could you pull that thing down? I'm sure there's people in the room who remember this. Of course, I never saw it. But just that is what a New York station should be like. You know, it doesn't have to look exactly like that, but it's incredible that that was even countenance to pull it down. I know it was looking scruffy towards the end, you know, but there was reasons why it was let slide. And how, you know, if I was the operator of one of those big wrecking balls, and someone said to me, right, here's your job, get on with it, I could not press that button. How could you do that to that beautiful building? But we are where we are. And as was said earlier, that did launch the Preservation Society, so something good always comes out of something bad. We had something similar in London with the demolition of the old Euston and the Euston Arch, and we came within an ace of our own Penn Station in a way, with the beautiful Victorian Gothic building of the St. Pancras Hotel, which again came with that close to being demolished, but the poet laureate of the day, John Betjeman, sorry. So John Betjeman, he saved it, it's there, it's now repurposed, and of course it's the home of the Eurostar. Anyway, we are where we are. So before I get on to talk about the actual project in hand, I thought I'd just talk about my last experience, which was with the Elizabeth Line. A, because this is an example of a transit design excellence, and B, because it represents a golden opportunity which we can replicate here in New York. So for those of you who don't know, I'm sure most of you do, the Elizabeth Line was effectively an infill between mainline railways out on the west side of London and on the east side of London. And by filling in the middle with a brand new high-speed, fit-for-purpose, very high-capacity subway line, you immediately got an east-west through running route. So you don't have to change trains if you want to go through London, going east to west. It complemented the north-south existing north-south corridor, which is made up by Thameslink. And I'm a great believer in through running, because through running, and you know what I mean by that, right? So not having to, A, get off a train, get on the subway, and then get on another train the other side to traverse the city, and B, not having to have trains, which is inherently wasteful. Some pass through Penn, i.e. Amtrak trains, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them, NJT trains, a lot of LIR trains, as you know, either come in, terminate, tip out and go back from whence they came to go and get another bunch of passengers, or empty out and then go off empty to Sunnyside or West Side Yard. So it's inherently inefficient because, for starters, the dwell times go through the roof. And the second reason is, with through running, what you get is, and there's evidence of it across the world, the RER in Paris, Thameslink and the Elizabeth Line in London, and many others. Even in the US, we have some small examples. You get this halo effect, whereas rather than just the beneficiary city of a sort of hub and spoke system getting all of the economic impact, if you expand that transit network to the cities and towns either side, you immediately do get economic benefit in the broader area. So within a kilometre or mile, as we'd say in the UK and here, of an Elizabeth Line station, the number of new houses has rocketed. It's 8 to 14% higher, and nearly 400,000 jobs have been created in the greater London area as a direct result of the Elizabeth Line. 55,000 new homes developed as a result of the impact of the railway. Businesses have sprung up from Reading in the west through to Romford in the east, and further afield still. And it's really been a game changer for London, which is, of course, one of New York's greatest economic rivals. So we have the opportunity, we should at least look at the opportunity to do the same thing here. Yes, Amtrak runs through, but why don't we look at some of the others? So we'll come back to that when I get to a later slide. Now, we all know that Penn Station is, without question, the central hub and the linch point, the sort of the key station within the Northeast Corridor. So it's a bit of a paradox in some ways, that you've got these beautiful stations along the Northeast Corridor, let's say 30th Street in Philly, and yet you've got this sort of ugly duckling in the middle, and yet it's the most important station. So we very much appreciate being given this opportunity by the administration to sort this thing out. The impact cannot be overemphasized. It's without question our most important station. There's over 1,000 daily train movements, and the station as it stands today A serves 3 times the numbers for which it was designed. It was designed for 200,000 daily users. It's now servicing 600,000. So credit to the staff, right? I call them miracle workers, the fact that they keep that thing going. And that number, 600,000, is more than JFK, Newark, and LaGuardia combined. It's a huge undertaking. It serves 18 Amtrak routes. It hosts more than 12 million Amtrak guests or customers, passengers, call them what you will, a year. We have around 1,000 Amtrak employees working in and directly around the station. And of course, it's not just Amtrak. We've got our colleagues, our sister railroads, New Jersey Transit using the station. We've got Long Island using the station. And in the not too distant future, Metro North coming in. So do nothing, in my opinion, is absolutely not an option. Now, we all know, and it was alluded to earlier, the station as it stands has 1 or 2 challenges. It's completely overwhelmed. It's unfit for purpose. To be honest, it's a miracle that it works as well as it does. So you would think that we would be already talking about a sort of massive gateway station, an iconic station. But this is something that has long been recognized, but people have talked about it literally for decades, as we heard from the intro. So a number of things. First of all, the limited street presence. Many's the time. I spend a lot of time actually on the station at the moment, getting my head around it and looking at it and thinking what we need to do. And many's the time I've stood topside, street level, outside Penn Station, maybe by where that bike is there. And someone's come up to me and said, excuse me, mate, where's Penn Station? And you're like, well, it's there. And it's just so not obvious. So it's not particularly present. It's kind of scruffy. You know, there's all these little add-ons onto MSG. Even MSG, whether you like it or you don't, has, I think, been deteriorated over the years by all these sort of add-ons. And secondly, we've now got this mishmash of entrances. Some of them are accessible, some aren't. Some look very grand. There's all sorts of different architectural treatments. It's a mess. It's sort of dog's breakfast. It doesn't sort of mesh together. Then what else? Even for seasoned commuters, you have to stop and think about where you are. It's not intuitive to find your way around this labyrinth and sort of maze underground. It's very, very difficult to navigate yourself around. You've got the bi-level passenger concourse, very poor sight lines. It's kind of claustrophobic with those low ceilings, and very limited natural light, although there's something being done about it recently, which I'll come on to. So inadequate capacity, that is what is known as, you know, I'm sure, as the pit, which is where poor New Jersey Transit customers have to gather every day. And you might think, oh, Andy's chosen a picture when the service was disrupted. Nah, that was probably an evening peak, regular going, right? And so I cringe when I see that, when I see, particularly older people being sort of flattened by the crush as everyone tries to get, because the platform goes up late, which is another reason and one that we'd like to address. But there's this massive crush to then try and haul open those really heavy doors and go down the single staircases. It's completely inadequate. Very hot down there, uncomfortable conditions, and as I said, confusing layouts. And the third across, that's again a fairly recent photo. It's safe, I don't want to spook anyone, but very old-fashioned, outdated systems, which, we're kind of on a knife edge sometimes. If those systems go down, we have a real problem. Now, having said all of that, credit where credit's due, way before my time, a lot of good work has been done. And in recent years, Amtrak, New Jersey Transit, MTA, and other neighborhood partners have continuously undertaken projects to improve the conditions in and around Penn Station. You can see some examples there. So on the left, you've got the work that Amtrak and Vornado did to complete the 7th Avenue, 32nd Street entrance. So we now do have natural light and air down into the concourse, and it's fully accessible with ADA compliance. We heard about Moynihan earlier on. I came back from London having led TfL through COVID and got the Elizabeth line open, and I knew that Moynihan was being done, so I walked in thinking, I wonder what it's going to be like, and it is very impressive. Is it perfect? I know there's a few things that need to be sorted out, and we'd like to address those. But without question, that is a nice concourse, nice and intuitive, single-level concourse, lots of ambient light. It's beautiful, actually. One thing, it's a personal bugbear of mine. Yes, there's a lot of individual train describers dotted around, but you see people sort of squinting at them in the distance, and yet there's this massive board up there, the one with all the adverts on. I kind of get it that you want to earn money from the adverts, but couldn't we have the middle two? One to be an arrivals board and one to be a departures. So that's to me, that's what railway stations should have, right? I mean, it's kind of a basic, but you can still keep your ads on either side. And then what else have we got on the right-hand side? That credit to my former employer, fantastic job. The MTA did 33rd Street Concourse and the new entrance on 7th Avenue and 31st Street. So that really shows what's possible by elevating the ceiling. You know, and it wasn't a massive excavation job. It is means what you have to do is relocate some of the plant, and then you can elevate the ceilings. The finishes are much better. You've got more vertical circulation equipment, and you've also got natural light coming along. But it's been very piecemeal, and it only accentuates, if you like, that sort of slightly messy look of the station. You can see sort of bits that have been done, bits that haven't been done. There's all these tide marks. It's completely unacceptable in 2026. So that's where we come in. We being a broad team, and we have set ourselves 5 objectives. You can see them up there. Obviously, we want to renovate and modernize the station. We must do something about increasing capacity, A, because it's already suboptimal, and B, because, as I said earlier, we've got Metro North coming in via the Penn Access project, plus in the not too distant future, the Gateway project will start delivering more trains from the west side, from over in New Jersey. So we must increase concourse capacity. There's so much that could be done to make that station safer and to have more efficient station operations. Do you know there's 3 separate cleaning contracts for Penn Station? It probably doesn't surprise you. And even the floor at one point has different finishes, which sounds like, oh, well, it was done at different times. It's actually to help the cleaners know which bits they do and which bits they don't do, which is just ridiculous. And then, so accommodate some passenger service growth and deliver a world-class experience. So I said earlier, I'd come back to that point about semantics. The project I inherited, there were 2 projects actually. There was Penn Reconstruction, which Amtrak was leading, which the MTA were leading, and Penn Expansion, which Amtrak was leading. And we've parked the expansion piece, which would have seen the demolition of Block 780 with all that controversy. That's been parked. We've taken over from the MTA the reconstruction work. The word I like to use, though, is transformation, which sounds like just semantics, but it's meant to be an absolute ambitious statement of intent. It is that we're not going to just do a lick of paint. We're not just going to tart it up a bit. It's going to be a top-to-bottom transformation of every single aspect of customer service, of signage, of the retail offer. There's the provision of customer information, everything, the interaction with staff. I want every interaction to be consistently excellent every day. So that's the plan. So easily said, though, not so easily done. How are we going to do it? We're going to run a competition, and that competition is well underway. Watch this space, because there will be some news on that soon. We have set to prospective bidders. We asked for letters of interest from prospective bidders for a master developer competition. We set what the base scope should be, and you can see it up there outlined in blue. Obviously, the base scope is we're talking about the existing station. We've also got the little bit that sticks out, the Penn Service Building, which you saw earlier, which I have been in, actually. And it's a fascinating building. You've got the old power board, which by the way, I'm having that covered up in a tarpaulin to stop it further deteriorating with pigeon stuff. Because we should keep that for heritage, right? It's important. But so the base scope is, as you can see at the bottom, absolutely, let's get the job finished. We want all of these station entrances to look the same, to be fully compliant, and to draw in natural light. We want a single level concourse. Now, normally with a P3 competition, you aren't too specific. You're supposed to be mining the ingenuity and imagination of the private sector. But let's not mess about. Don't waste my time with a new scheme that still maintains multiple levels, right? So let's specify that from the get-go. We want a single level concourse. What else do we want? We absolutely want to sort out the back of house as well. Too many times in modern station modernizations, you see the customers get beautiful new surroundings, rightly so, but the staff have to carry on struggling with suboptimal conditions, environment, and equipment. So that's not happening. I'd like to see, for example, a state-of-the-art single, unified, for all the operators, station control room to oversee the complex, not to dispatch trains, but to oversee the station and make sure that it remains compliant and excellent and all the equipment's working. The next one is interesting, modernize the train shed. We could have just taken the view where this is all about what's above ground, and we're going to create a beautiful new Penn Station, whether the garden stays put or not, which I'll come back to. But I take the view that if in the future New Yorkers, we will have sold New Yorkers short if they come to the station and go, wow, this is fantastic. Look at this beautiful new building. And then they go in, they go to the single level concourse. Look at this, it's spectacular. But then they go downstairs and they're like, did they run out of money? It's still the same gloomy, cramped, hot, slightly scary, claustrophobic layout, which doesn't embrace the potential, at least, for the concept of through running. And again, this isn't new thinking. Credit to Rethink NYC, Sam Turvey's group. They have done some superb thinking already on the potential for through running, including looking at what sounds counterintuitive. Could you actually make the station run better with fewer tracks? That sounds completely counterintuitive, right? How can you possibly do that? Well, if the trains aren't spending so long in the platform because they're running through, and you are able to preload the platforms because the platforms are wider, so then you don't have this mad scramble for platforms as happens today, because we just cannot preload the platforms. You could arguably make do with fewer platforms, fewer tracks. And if you have fewer tracks, you can have wider platforms. Now, of course, that does mean removing some columns. And I've heard people go, oh, it's impossible because you have to get rid of 1,000 columns. Well, again, Sam's group has done some work to show actually that's not true, that you'd need to probably do about 130, but that's much more doable. And my mantra in life is anything's possible. And that sounds like you could do some underpinning. So it may not happen, but the one thing I'm determined is we will have a real look, a proper look with RTC modeling, a proper look at through running, and that's already happening with the FRA. And I'm convinced we can do better at track level to make it safer and wider, and also provide many, many more escalators and elevators to again speed up the transition between customers arriving and customers wanting to leave. And then the final one. Yes, that is part of the plan. We'd love to bring back into proper use that service building, the one remaining bit of the old Penn Station. That would be fantastic. So here's the timeline. Very, very topical. The checks show what we've already done. We are not messing about. The team came together in June. I started my work in June. Again, credit to my team. They've been fantastic. We said we will be absolutely 100% compliant with things like NEPA and 100% compliant with Amtrak procurement, but we're going to get on with it. We're not going to take so long as we normally do. It's a new paradigm. So we want things to be done more quickly. So we're paralleling activity and we're powering through these various things, including a tour by the Secretary for Transportation, Sean Duffy, and I. We announced in August of 2025, get ready, private sector. We're about to fire the starting gun for this competition. In fall of 2025, in advance of that, and to whet the industry's appetite, we held a number of industry days. Then in October, dead on time, we said we'd do it in October, and we did. I think it was the 30th of October. We released the master developer solicitation, and we invited letters of interest. I can tell you, I can't tell you who, but we got 4 letters of interest, and they're being evaluated right now. So again, watch this space. So what happens next is we will then announce who's been shortlisted for the master developer competition. The notice will go out this month, January this month, the notice will go out. Obviously the bidders will have time to put together their bids. And we're silent, by the way, I said I'd come back to this. We're silent on whether or not MSG moves. Why? Because 1, I don't know at the moment. 2, it's above my pay grade. And 3, were we to opine now, and we can't, but were we to, at a stroke, you would knock out one or other of the bids, because some of them are binary. Some of them are predicated, we predict, on the garden staying put, and some are predicated on the garden moving. So we'd rather have an open competition. Show us what you've got. Let's have a look at the designs. So then the idea is that the bids come back in. We lock ourselves away. and then it will be an Amtrak board decision in May, as long as we can put together a compelling paper to show that it's buildable, it's constructible, affordable, achievable, and that it passes a whole bunch of evaluation criteria. We will put a paper to the board in May, the Amtrak board, and it will be the Amtrak board that makes the decision as to which of the proposals it wants to go forward. They may say they don't like any of them. I'm not going to predict that, but that's the time frame. So I just want to reiterate that it's an Amtrak board decision. So don't believe what you read, where some people say, oh, this is all smoke and mirrors, it's Trump that's going to decide. No, it's the Amtrak board who will make the decision. Now, will we then go to the White House and show them the preferred design, the recommended design? Absolutely, for a very simple reason. I will be going to the White House to say, I need billions to do this. So it's not unreasonable that they should want to see it. We then power through a period from June of 26 through the fall of 2027 to put together, to get the design up to about 30, 40, maybe 60%, to get through NEPA, to get to financial and commercial close, and my marching orders are a shovel in the ground by the end of 2027. And to focus everyone's mind, I should have brought a picture of it, we've put up in our office a countdown clock. It's kind of scary because it's now showing less than 2 years, a countdown clock that shows the number of years, months, weeks, and days to the end of 2027. That's the time frame. What else have we got? So I'm slightly behind my notes. So this is the procurement timeline. I've talked about most of this. Mid-June, we will make that announcement. Of course, we can't do this alone. What makes this job both interesting and supremely challenging is the number of players. You've got all of these players. You've got New York State, you've got New Jersey State, you've got the MTA, you've got New Jersey Transit, you've got 2 governors, you've got a new mayor, you've got community boards, you've got, who have I forgotten, USDOT, the FRA, and you've got the White House. So, no challenge there, no pressure. There's lots of people. But the good news is I have yet to meet anyone who thinks do nothing is an option, because it isn't. I've not met anyone who said, what's wrong with the existing Penn Station? Leave it alone. We really like it. I haven't met that person yet. And I'll just close by saying we think this is the golden opportunity. And again, I was talking to a couple of colleagues on the way in. There's so much that's already underway and some stuff that's already being done, like the new Newark terminal, fantastic. LaGuardia, fantastic, in the aesthetics and the form and the function of LaGuardia Airport, but also because that gives me hope. It's not going to be easy to rebuild Penn while it's still in operation, but it can be done, right? London Bridge Station was rebuilt in London while that was still operational. And LaGuardia, it was the small matter of keeping an airport going. It shows it can be done with smart people. JFK is underway. The Midtown bus terminal is underway. And the one thing that really stands out, the last really big project, is the one that's been talked about longest, which is, of course, New York Penn Station. So that's it. I hope you found that interesting. We are determined to give New York and New Yorkers and New Jersey and the US a station worthy of this great city. We can't turn the clock back and give you back what we previously had, which was, of course, this, but we can give this city, region, and country a beautiful station that is worthy of this greatest city in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. We're going to now have a question and answer session. Andy, if all right, we're going to ask you a couple of questions. For everyone in the audience, raise your hand if you've got a question that you'd like to ask. Samada Kaba is out there. There she is right there with her hand out. Samada has got index cards, so raise your hand and catch Samada's eye. She'll give you a card. Please write your question down, and then we'll collect them, and we'll get them up here to make sure everybody's question is answered as much as we can. With that, we're going to start with our questions, and thank you again, Andy. That was great. And maybe Alan, you'd like to pick up where you left off, and also where Andy left off.
First of all, can you hear me? Yes. Okay, that was a great presentation. Let's give him one more round of applause. And I'd like to suggest to Andy that in all those stakeholders, we add the AIA New York too. Okay. We're going to be there whether we're on the list or not. So the slide behind us, you started with, it says, what we lost. And we lost this major civic building and civic space. And what you've described very adequately is how to respond to the conditions underground. So one of the things that we'd like you to talk about is how to respond to the conditions above ground. So we lost the station. What are we going to build above ground? Just not new entrances, but what is the current thinking about reestablishing an actual train hall?
Okay, great question. Well, the design here is that this will be a P3 master developer-led competition. So to a certain extent, we're letting the imagination of the private sector answer that question, but with certain guide rails, right? So we've said things like all of the entrances, as I mentioned earlier, I want them to be not just code compliant, I want this station to excel and be an exemplar of full accessibility. But we're also saying things like single level concourse. But then we would like the private sector and architects and advocacy groups to tell us, well, what do they think is possible? So I've seen all sorts of different drawings. We need things to be credible. It's all very well having a sort of flight of fantasy, a drawing on a napkin, but these things have got to be credible. Yes, form is important, but function is also super important. So will it be a classical design? Will it be a sort of modern classic design? Time will tell. We need to evaluate all these things. One aspect we have made, we've reminded the potential bidders on, again, without leading the competition, because I want this to be, a genuine competition where we invite others to come up with the solutions, which we can then evaluate. We've reminded them of the executive order around classical form for public buildings. So we haven't given an opinion on that. We've just said, in your submission, you need to be aware of, mindful of that direction. And you can interpret that as you see fit. How some might interpret that as, right, it's got to be an absolute replication of what we previously had. Others might say, no, classical can mean lots of things, right? It could mean a sort of more modern interpretation. I'm open-minded on it. My personal view, if you want my personal view, is there's a fine line between classical and kitsch. You know what I mean by kitsch? We don't want some sort of Vegas pretend old Penn Station. If you're going to do it properly. And that's not easy. You know better than me, you're the architects. So if you're going to replicate sort of the old, you've got to be careful that it doesn't look like some sort of Vegas theme park. It's just my personal opinion. But I'm open-minded. We absolutely want to see the street level presence be as iconic as what's below ground. Let's say that. Plus, I'm already having discussions with the city and with various community boards about how you can address the wider public realm issues around the station. Because again, we'll have failed New Yorkers if we build a beautiful new station and fail to address some of the public realm elements around the station. It's not 8th Avenue is not exactly one of New York's most glorious thoroughfares. So there's lots to do in order to make it truly a destination and truly iconic. I hope that answers the question.
So Andy, I'm actually going to just say something that I believe is a concern for everybody in this room. As a group of architects, we have been met with the possibility of guidelines that seem very retroactive. I think you spoke very well to not going into the kitsch side, but it is certainly a concern among our constituents that a decree has been made as to what sort of stylistically we might want to expect. So I just want to appreciate your addressing that and just saying that it is certainly something on the forefront of our minds.
Yeah, and again, which is why we didn't, I don't think it's our place as Amtrak sort of pseudo public servants, but to interpret what that means. So we just We passed it through as you need to be mindful of that edict. But you can interpret that edict and that executive order in many ways, I would suggest. You know, classical takes many forms, you know better than me. So I'm intrigued to see what people come up with. But again, in hopefully answering the previous question, we are not talking about just subsurface. We've got to do this properly. I mean, of course, money is an issue. People sometimes say to me, do you think you can pull this off? What do you think will stop it? As long as we have enduring political support, and as long as we can put together a capital stack that doesn't make this unaffordable, because, you know, people say, well, how are you going to afford it? You know, it's naive to say that the quotes public sector will and should pay for the whole thing. That ain't going to happen. But equally, the private sector isn't going to pay for the whole thing. It's a PPP. And as I've had to remind people on occasions, one of the P's isn't philanthropy. They don't do it for free. They expect to be paid back. But what we need to do is get to a point where the capital stack is populated sufficient such that the gap between the money you raise from myriad sources and what it actually costs is manageable. We cannot have unaffordable, say, availability payments, because that won't get through the Amtrak board.
So on another question, on one level, I think we're all very excited about the P3 and the alternate delivery approaches that you're taking. However, I think one thing, and in the design community, both architectural and engineering and urban planning, oftentimes in these more aggressive delivery systems, the design quality is sacrificed. It's a very aggressive system. It prioritizes cost, it prioritizes schedule. We certainly are respectful of that. But how might you be able to put forward the priority of design excellence, design quality, both during the procurement, but then on a sustained basis in terms of design and construction?
Sure. So let's do it in the logical order. In the procurement, again, we're trying not to be too specific, but we do make, it's a detailed document. It's huge and it's not yet ready to go, but it will go out later this month, as I said earlier. But we are stressing that we are serious about something that obviously has to be affordable, and it's got to be buildable and sort of credible. But we do want to see design excellence factored in. We don't want some sort of cosmetic, aesthetic tart-up, you know, as I'd say, it's a British expression. We want to have something that will pass muster in terms of aesthetics, in terms of form, but combining that with function. Plus, I feel quite strongly, as someone who's operated stations across the world, it's got to be something that's practical. So we want quality finishes, we want quality design from an aesthetic and a user perspective. We want excellence. So how do we do that? We do have within our team, we have Amtrak architectural capability. Plus we have, just as one of our many advisors, we've taken on a legal advisor, an environmental advisor, a financial advisor, but we've also got a PMCMP3 advisor who are themselves developers who will peer review and not just peer review what the private sector comes up with, but particularly once we get to the chosen bidder, they will help them, handhold them through the process such that they do come up with something that passes muster from not just a functional perspective, but also a form perspective.
So basically, you will have on your team architects who will champion this concept.
Yes, obviously money is a factor, and if, for example, we cannot raise the full capital stack, if that the sticker shock of what the price is that we're talking about is too much for, say, the public sector to countenance, we may have to rein in our ambitions. But we're starting from, we want to do this properly. This is a once in a generation opportunity to build a station, for the next 100 years, whatever. So we're starting by thinking very big. we may need to rein that in. But again, it's difficult for me to answer. When I did the press conference with the secretary, the media, we did a scrum. And the one question that they kept asking, but Mr. Byford, you must know, how much is it going to cost? Well, I don't know because we haven't run the competition yet. Okay, fair enough. But when will it be finished? Well, I don't know because we haven't run the competition yet. It depends what it is.
So I have a couple questions that deal with the public realm and the development potential outside of the project itself, which have been part of some of the prior proposals. I'll just make one suggestion. Your slide with the partners and stakeholders, I think you should include this New York City on that as well. I know you have the community boards, but New York City really needs to be a partner here in terms of not only the streetscape, but potential planning implications for this project. So,
well, may I just comment on that? That's
Sure.
an oversight. We'll correct that because we are talking to the city. I've had quite a few discussions with the city actually. Because they hold the planning portfolio, and I said earlier it's above my pay grade as to what happens to MSG. Well, it's absolutely within the gift of the city council with the permitting implications. But we're already talking to the city. And community boards, but the city about transit-oriented development opportunities, but also about the city's aspiration for the wider Penn area. So we'll add the city icon to that slide. Thank you for spotting that.
You listed among others, so I'm sure you're going to be with them. So just to dig into that a little bit, the recent Penn 33 Plaza is an example where a new entrance was created and a pedestrian street directly adjacent to the station. There is a lot of pedestrian congestion up and down 7th Avenue, particularly during rush hour. So I'm wondering, are you anticipating this project would address some of the sort of larger public realm issues, not only adjacent where the entrances are, but even looking at how the pedestrian experience, the commuters, as well as the users of that area might see a beneficial, positive experience, and how you would do that. Would that be with the city agencies?
That would be with the city and with the community boards. We've got to be careful that we don't have too much scope creep for us for what we're doing, because we've got enough on our plate to oversee the transformation of Penn Station. If we start to take in too much in terms of direct responsibilities on the surrounding area, and the Koreatown Association have said, well, they'd like to get involved and do some work in the Koreatown corridor. But as long as we have a good partnership and potentially, I'm looking for money from the city, and they'll want something in return. I reiterate, what we don't want to end up with is a beautiful new station that's still within a sort of rather dowdy area. Let's finish the job off and do it properly and create a real district. There is some elements of which are already in place. You alluded to them, but let's really finish off that whole district such that it is a real jewel in the crown for New York City.
So is this on?
Yes.
Okay. So let's actually address the elephant in the room, or the city, a building that has had many elephants in it, actually, Madison Square Garden. Have you been in discussions with James Dolan and his group about their future? I think their permit runs out in 5 years. And how are you dealing with that, and what you're thinking about those two proposals that I think you received that actually has the garden elsewhere?
So I have met with Mr. Dolan. I'm aware of his views. Right now, he doesn't want to move. It's no secrets. I'm not giving away any state secrets. In a way, why would he? He spent $1 billion on his arena. It's very well situated because it's right above a major sort of transit interchange, and he's kind of happy with what he's got. But I know that in talking to him and his team, they're pragmatic enough to know that, well, if one of the bids involved building him an alternative arena, a really amazing arena somewhere else, that wouldn't cost him anything probably, that someone else would build, and he wouldn't have to move until it was ready. Well, if I were him, I would be like, okay, I'll think about it. Tell me what you've got. As long as there's continuity and you don't leave render the rangers and the Knicks homeless in the interim. So. But I've spoken with him right now. They don't want to move. It's not a secret. But let's see what the proposals are that come up, and then we'll have that greater discussion. The current permit is short. It was a 5-year permit, so we must be at least 2 years into it now. I'll be interested to see, back to that interaction with the city, what happens.
I actually think it was a 10-year permit that has 5 years
left. Oh, was it?
On it.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
All right, we have several questions from the audience. I know we've got some more.
Yep,
Sure.
Part two of my question having to do with development outside of the project itself. Prior proposals have included significant high-density development around the block, intended to supplement some funding for the reconstruction. And in the case of the recent New York State proposal, superseded local zoning regulations. Are you planning to include something like this in the RFP, the developer RFP that would address some of these development issues? And are you open to that kind of funding stream to potentially help get the project built?
So what we said in the RFP, and for that matter, in the collateral that went out in advance of the LOIs, was, remember there was that slide that I put up that said what's in the base scope? We also added, you can also make a pitch on the following additional areas of scope. So if you want to make a pitch for areas outside of that base scope, you can. If you want to talk about other ways in which you might make money by mining air rights or whatever, you can. So things like resurrecting the previous Hochul plan, you can talk to us about that. But we've made it very clear, absolutely, we'll listen to you, but we're not bound by that. These are proposals. And, again, I stress that they're proposals. Let's hear what's out there. I'm not going to say no to anything right now, because right now we don't have the capital stack for X, whatever X is, but let's call it, 5 to 7 billion. So I'm not going to rule out at this stage any potential way of funding this thing. It's a bit like a funnel. As we get further and further down this road, you can begin to say, well, okay, we want that and we don't want that. But we're leaving the door open.
Have you had any discussions with city planning about their visions for that area and how this might dovetail?
Very early discussions with city development, actually, but nothing material yet. Because what you have to remember is a lot of this is hypothetical. We only started in June, and we've not yet seen what the proposals are. So that's why I can't give specific answers on some of these things, because I just don't know. But what I want to really stress is we're leaving the door open so that we get a whole breadth of ideas in terms of design, in terms of ingenuity about how you might fund this thing. Let's hear what's out there before we just unilaterally rule it out.
We've got questions from the audience rolling in, so maybe we'll start going through a couple of those, and then we can come back for some follow-up here. One involving public art, and you showed some images of the new Terminal A at Newark, LaGuardia, and what's going on at JFK. The Port Authority is doing some great things with truly integrated public art and the value it has for public spaces. So one of our questions is there a requirement for that in the RFP, or will there be? And if you could expand on the role that we see public art playing in this effort.
I'd have to check whether we actually specify that as a requirement. I think we make reference to it, but I'd have to check that. But I can tell you that I'm a huge fan of it. I think it really, done properly, it really enhances a building, and it creates a bond with the community, particularly if it's a local artist that you use. And I think back to what we used to do. There's art on the underground. We have art at Amtrak. Amtrak has a proud history of commissioning various artists to come up with things to enhance the public space and just make the place less utilitarian and more pleasant to use. So I think I can safely say that it's a given that there will be art.
Thank you. Maybe one more from the audience, and then we'll follow up here. But you mentioned through running a time or two. Is the question from the audience, is it your position that it's an option or that it's mandatory or a part of one of the requirements?
Well, one point I forgot to mention when I put up the timeline, while we being Amtrak, we are running this competition, and you saw the timelines, it's already started. We need to get the competition, or rather get the RFP out at the end of this month, which we will, and then we want to have a recommendation to the board by May. In parallel, because that's the key word, right? We're paralleling activity. There has long been an entirely legitimate clamour for an independent review of through running, because before my time, there were the two projects, reconstruction and expansion, and there seemed to be two completely polar schools of thought. One school of thought was, through running, there's no point looking at it. We've looked at it. It's a waste of time. It's never going to happen. So the only solution to Penn Station is massive expansion. And how do you do that? You demolish Block 780 and you build this enormous stub terminal, and that's how you accommodate more trains. And maybe you design it such that in the future, maybe by 2080, you could run more trains through under the East River tunnels. So that's polar extreme number one. It's all about expansion. Then you have the polar extreme on the other end, which is there are people out there who say you don't need any expansion whatsoever. The whole world and world hunger can be solved through running. I think the reality is probably somewhere in between. We may, at the end, if there's a delta between the capacity that we need in the future and what we can achieve by more efficient use of the platforms, by maybe some tweaks in terms of the layout and the infrastructure down there, and if there's a latent market to be mined for through running, but if there's still a delta between what that can achieve and what's needed, then we may need to go back to look at some limited expansion. So let's see what happens. But the one thing that I've committed is I think you can't just say to a community, sorry, we're demolishing your block, without having at least truly looked at, do we really need to do that? Can we not make the existing footprint run more efficiently? And can we not look to achieve the kind of economic benefits that London has enjoyed and other cities like Paris have enjoyed? Let's take a proper look at it, and let's use proper modeling, RTC modeling, to prove the case one way or another. Then we'll know the answer. So not subjective, objective.
Thank you. Did you, Eve? And then we'll get back to some from the audience.
Thank you. So, Andy, as New Yorkers, we like to play on the international stage. And Penn Station is very unique, clearly. But in your experience, having built in many different destinations, locations, are there any examples that might speak to what our aspirations are for Penn Station that we can look for as models for lessons learned, things to do, things to not do? Perhaps you could enlighten us.
So I would preface my comments by saying I'm not a builder, I'm an operator, but I've been fortunate enough in my career to either oversee, as you know, in various capacities, projects like the Spadina subway extension in Toronto and like the Elizabeth line in London, or to go in my sort of various travels around the world to see what good looks like. So I would say there's plenty of examples of what we should be aspiring to. And example number one would be St. Pancras in London, because I remember that. I went to Leicester University and the trains to Leicester go out of St. Pancras. And it used to be a real sort of gloomy, forgotten London terminus. It's got this spectacular roof over it. It's a classic Victorian structure. The train shed's absolutely beautiful, but you could still see soot on the roof from where the steam trains used to be, and British Rail wanted to get rid of it, and it was basically being run down. It was saved, and in the end, a real visionary decided, well, actually, it would be better to route the new high-speed route for the Eurostar away from Waterloo and into St. Pancras. So St. Pancras was transformed into the kind of station that I think we should be talking about, where it's a destination in its own right. The capacity has been massively expanded. It's fully accessible. There's an amazing retail offer. It's got all the attributes that a world-class station should have. Other examples, in terms of sort of aesthetics and beauty, it's only a small example, but I was blown away when I went to Naples, and I visited the Naples subway. Like, those stations are spectacular. And I just saw some imagery of a new station in Rome at the Circus Maximus. They're just amazing. So again, they've got to be functional, but why not make them beautiful at the same time? To me, it's never binary. It shouldn't be either or. You're trying to achieve both. You've got to make sure you get the practicalities right. The Elizabeth line is really an outstanding example of architectural design. It's very intuitive. The stations are generally similar, so it's very easy to navigate. But there's things that you can just forget and not do, and it's only a small thing. I don't know if anyone knows what the Elizabeth line ghosts are. If you go to the Elizabeth line, where there's seating on the platform, or where there isn't, there's now these terrible tide marks on the wall, because either people have leaned back against the wall, or where if there's no seat, they put their foot up against it. So all these dirty marks have appeared, because the architects really didn't want to have perspex on the wall or whatever. So they've dealt with it. They're now putting up sort of murals or something, I think. So you just got to think about the practicalities. But I think there's plenty of good examples out there. I can't really think of a bad example, but with some thought I probably could. But the good news is we're not starting from scratch. We can learn from others and overlay that unique New York feel to the station as well.
So one of the things that was interesting in your presentation, among all those other things that you presented, was the connectivity map showing its connection to Westchester, Connecticut, Long Island, and elsewhere. What it didn't show, and I don't know if you're thinking about this, it's a little bit outside the box of what we're talking about today, is that Penn Station does not connect to any of the airports. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you have been discussing with any of your colleagues?
Well, I think the purpose of the FRA study should flush that out. Obviously, you need to look at the sort of physical infrastructure required to do that. But I would love to see, for example, a service from Penn Station. You could go to Newark, but sort of. But I truly want to see with the FRA study, not only what physical changes should we make and specify to prospective bidders to factor into their designs at track level, because they just make absolute sense, irrespective of whether we embrace full through running or not. But then look at what are the potential markets and traffic objectives, in other words, places where people want to go, and city pairings and regional pairings and objectives like airports that would enable us to put together the business case to fund what is not a cheap option, actually, because, through running sounds easy. It's not as easy as you think, because you've got to have compatible locomotives. One of the railroads uses overhead wires. The other one uses third rail shoe collection. So that's not insurmountable. There are such things as dual mode locos these days. But you've got to sort out a whole bunch of other things. But ultimately, there's got to be a market, because we don't want to be carrying empty air around. So we should evaluate, for example, what would the market be to go to LaGuardia, go to Newark, go to JFK directly. But certainly, I think it should be looked at. Another game changer for London, which massive competitor to New York, was the fact that where Heathrow used to be pretty poorly served, it was the Piccadilly line, and that stops everywhere, right? It's the slow train. Then you got the Heathrow Express and Heathrow Connect. You've now got the Elizabeth line, and that's a game changer because you can go from the city and from Canary Wharf, the two primary financial centers, to Heathrow Airport in 40 minutes. That is an absolute game changer.
Another question from the audience about your vision and opportunities for the service building. We talked a little about it. It's one of the biggest remaining component of the original Penn Station. Will maintaining it being a requirement? I know it's within the scope, but what is the current vision anyway for the service building's future?
So I'd love to see it repurposed. There is some equipment in there. In the basement, we do have some HVAC and pumps and various other things. But pretty much, and you saw the picture earlier, the rest of the building is kind of just abandoned. I mean, I don't want to encourage urban exploring, by the way, but we do have security. But it's amazing in there. You can still see the old coal hoppers where the coal used to get dropped in. And there's these big sort of ash buckets, and there's embedded rail in the concrete because once upon a time the trains came in, little mini trains to get rid of all the ash and all the rest of it. But that building is sturdy. It's got great floor plates. It could absolutely be repurposed either for railway use. And the obvious thing to me is much more back of house equipment gets moved over to the service building because that frees up more passenger space. So that seems to me to be a bit of a no-brainer. And or, because it could be both, and or commercial use. So, I wouldn't rule out having a hybrid. We move some equipment over there and the rest of the floors and maybe the airspace might be used for something else.
Just a quick question about that. Does the service building, and I haven't done any urban exploring, nor will I, connect underground to Penn Station?
Yes, it does. I've walked that walk. It's not easy, but you can do it. There is a connection.
Just a reminder, if you've got any last questions, please get them in. We've got a few minutes left, Andy, so if you're good, we've got a few more from the audience. And maybe related to that kind of connection, but obviously, as you mentioned, Moynihan Hall is open now, and the connection between Moynihan and Penn Station is a little circuitous and not the best or not too terribly grand right now. Is there any plan to, once this is all done, integrate Moynihan, the transformed Penn Station, the 33rd Street entrance, et cetera, and integrate that into a functionally and visually, physically into one facility?
Yeah, sure. So I think, well, certainly that should be our objective. Let's make it a complex, so that it really is one whole thing. I mean, ideally, it won't all look exactly the same because different pieces have been done at different times. Oh, by the way, before anyone asked, we're not going to go in and tear up the 33rd Street corridor, which the MTA did, because why would we? I mean, it's a nice job. The challenge is to try to end up with something, though, that doesn't look like it was all done at different times. But certainly we should look to provide the same look and feel between Moynihan and Penn, because otherwise you do confuse customers. So you want the signage to be similar, you want the sort of wayfinding to be similar, and the provision of customer information to be the same, I would suggest. And definitely that connection, I think, can be enhanced. The other thing that I'm not ruling out, and I went and had a look around it, is gimbals. The Gimbals passageway, that is still there. I walked along it the other day. It's actually breached halfway, but only because there's scaffold there. And you can actually see into the basement of the old Pennsylvania Hotel, but it's still there, the Gimbals passageway. And if that were to be modernized and had modern lighting and modern security paraphernalia and potentially widened a bit, then at a stroke, you've got the Broadway lines connected as well. So I can't guarantee that will be done, but let's at least have a look at it.
Great, thank you. Maybe one more question, then we'll each sort of wrap up. And the question about mega projects acknowledging social realities, homelessness and other issues in the area. Is there a way that can be, in your experience, perhaps solved, mitigated, assisted, with this kind of a mega project and this kind of investment?
Again, we've got to be careful that we don't take on everyone's issues.
Yes.
We would want to work with other agencies who should look to address that. But it's not a new problem for me. I mean, when I was president of New York City Transit, we really were pushing to try to improve all aspects of the service. And obviously, one of the challenges was homeless people basically living in the subway. But the way I addressed it was, well, they're there for a reason, and that's because quite often they don't have anywhere else to go, or the alternatives. I remember speaking with one homeless person, said, well, have you thought about going into a shelter? And this guy was very eloquent, and he said, respectfully, have you ever been in one of those shelters? They're really scary. So you've got to provide a viable, safe, decent alternatives, because then I think morally you can be more insistent that people go there if they want to lie down, plus, or do whatever. Plus, I think design, and you're the experts, but design can really help in that regard. There's no chairs, there's no seating in Moynihan. There's a bit, we've added some, but I'm told, I could be wrong, it might be an urban myth, but I'm told one of the reasons there's no seating in Moynihan is because there was a concern that it would end up as like an encampment for the homeless. Well, not if you design the seats properly and you police the place properly. And if you're not careful, because you're worried about something, everyone loses. Okay, so let's not have any seats then. And you end up with everyone sitting on the floor. That's not a good look. And it's not acceptable, I don't think. So, but you can't just get it by just yelling at people or just arresting them or whatever. You've got to provide a decent, humane alternative.
Maybe now if we've each got a wrap-up question or statement.
I think just a statement. First of all, I think we're very pleased that you have come to this Center of Architecture. We want to offer you our support as you move forward. And I personally am going to sleep better at night because I feel like there's a champion who's going to really put forward a mandate to have a good and excellent design.
Thank you.
I just want to compliment you on your outreach to the community and really listening to what sometimes gets drowned out in projects like this, and the opportunity to work with the city, various agencies to potentially address some of the housing opportunities in terms of development in that area. And looking at Penn Station is really a vital part of the economic development of the city as it is. You pointed out the tremendous benefits from the Elizabeth line, and I don't see why that couldn't be replicated here as well. So really encouraged to see that as well.
Sure. Well, I might just make one final comment then. First of all, thanks for having me, and we'll need your help. We need your expertise. Hold us to account. When we do come up with designs via the third party, by all means, I'd love to have your input, because we want to make sure that everyone, you'll never please everyone, right? There'll always be some people who go, I don't like that. But as long as we come up with something that passes general muster, I think that's good. But one thing you made reference to, outreach, that will continue. I've made a point of going out and talking to whomsoever will listen, because we owe it to people. It's not meant to be some secretive project. We've got to be careful that we don't break procurement rules or commercial confidence. But the more excitement we can generate for this, the more unstoppable it becomes. And that's a deliberate tactic.
One quick plug for the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I'm, as we mentioned, co-chair with my esteemed colleague Russell Kriegel, Chief Architect of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and a couple of former chiefs are here tonight as well. But please, we have a lot of great events and discussions like this. We meet on the fourth Thursday of every month, so speak to Russell and me if you'd like to get more involved. But yeah, on behalf of the committee, we'd like to thank you again very much, Andy. You can see the power and the importance of this. Mm-hmm. Sure. One more plug. We have our Design Excellence Awards coming up. we have an annual Design Excellence Award specifically for transportation and infrastructure projects. So that'll be opening on the 28th of January. So please be on the lookout for that and be sure to get your projects submitted so the world of transportation and infrastructure can be uniquely rewarded for its design excellence. But again, thank you very, very much, Andy. This has been great.